Far away from congested cities, high up in these inaccessible mountains, life has changed little for hill shepherds like this man, seen here feeding salt to his sheep. It always was and still is a frugal existence, where survival depends on a delicate balance between man and nature, where even something as basic as salt becomes very important.
बड़ी हो रहा
बड़ी खास खाता हुआ जगह वो बातें सब क्या डुका मामू
For centuries now, these sturdy, fearless shepherds and their families have grown their own food on low-altitude farmland and reared sheep on higher pasture land for wool which they sold and made into clothing. Today, both the pattern of their lives and their traditional sources of income are threatened by changes over which they have no control. Pastures like these, full of grass and shrubs, covered much of the land not so very long ago. With the growth of agriculture and industry, these grasslands diminished. Even then, pastoralists didn't feel threatened. Not until economic, environmental and population imbalances forced them to seek other degrading alternatives. Here in the Pindari Glacier region of the Kumaon Himalaya, shepherds are known as Anvals. And this film is about a group of Anvals who find themselves on the threshold of change. Sheep thrive on nutritional short grasses found in high pastures. Such grass also ensures the growth of a fine coat of wool, which is why shepherds, like the Anvals, have traditionally journeyed to great heights with their sheep, often as high as 12 or even 15,000 feet up to the snow line. This is Netar Singh, the silent, lonely man of the group, a 50-year-old bachelor. He has been a shepherd since the age of 10. Wool and the sale of sheep is his economic contribution to his brother's family down in the village. They in turn provide him with food and clothing. A 12-year-old boy is the new member of this group. His name is Dagar. He is training to be an Anval, learning the traditional routes and how to look after sheep under experienced shepherds like Netar and Tara. Tara is the unquestioned leader of the group. He decides where the sheep will graze, the time when they will move from one camp to another. His father, grandfather, and great-grandfather before him all journeyed along the same route that Tara follows today. And like his mother and grandmother, his wife cultivates the family fields in a village in the foothills. Anvals like Tara followed a harmonious, balanced pattern of life. The size of the herd was kept to a limit so that the grassland had time to regenerate and be ready for the shepherds in the following season. The wool they sold earned them enough to support their families, with sufficient left to make their own clothing. When they journeyed down in winter, there were steep slopes, fallows, and village commons on which the sheep grazed. Times have changed, however. The balance pattern is giving way to imbalances which have a far-reaching impact both on the Anvals who suffer economic and mental stress and on the ecological balance of the Himalaya. With the onslaught of winter, Tara, Netar and Dagar and their fellow shepherds are forced to begin their downward journey, moving from camp to camp till they reach the outskirts of their villages at about 4,000 feet. With spring, the cycle begins again, as they return with their sheep to these upper grasslands. The yearly journey up and down is part of a shepherd's hard and lonely life. This they have all accepted, just as their forefathers did, coping with sheep on high slippery slopes and across fast-flowing rivers. A hazardous life at the best of times. What is upsetting the Anvals are newer, more modern problems of change in hill areas. Wool used to fetch them a reasonable price. Today, in comparison to prices for agricultural produce, the earning from wool is not enough. So, Anvals prefer to keep larger flocks. At the same time, an increasing number of sheep owners give their flocks to the Anvals for grazing in high pastures. The grasslands have naturally remained the same, though the number of animals grazing on them has multiplied. This increased use steadily reduces the regenerative power of the land, which adds progressively to the economic stress faced by shepherds. Economic stress is snapping long-established, time-tested ties between shepherds and their environment. They are forced to allow sheep to overgraze, which they instinctively never did before. They have to sell sheep, which they never needed to before. Tara finds it emotionally painful to sell sometimes more than 50 lambs at the end of a season. And why not? After all, it would be painful for anyone who knew and loved every animal in his flock. On this particular journey, time and again, I saw Tara and the others return the right stray lamb to the right mother. Shepherds and their sheepdogs. Between them, they keep a constant watch and make sure no lamb is drowned or lost. Traditions run deep among such people who depend on nature. Tara's great-grandfather had built this camping hut, or parao as it's known here. It has stood the test of time and weather, and Tara continues to use it even today. Anvals use paraos as camping halts, a shelter to eat and sleep in, while their sheep graze in nearby pastures. To city people, the unsettled life of a shepherd may seem unnatural. But for shepherds and their wives, it is an accepted, even correct way of life. The men live away for nearly 8 months every year. The women in hill communities are therefore very strong, very independent, and self-sufficient. They travel miles in search of fuel wood over land stripped bare by timber merchants, always working, cultivating, cooking, bearing and rearing children. It is the presence of women in the village, in a settled life, that allows the men to journey away from home to graze sheep on the high Himalayan pastures. The agricultural and pastoral way of life had always been complementary. But extensive deforestation, more and more cultivation on steep hill slopes, and population pressures began to impose an impossible strain on the land and on the people. Nowadays, when the shepherds come down, there are no free areas near the villages to camp in. Once accepted and even welcomed, now there is hostility towards these shepherds from villagers and from forest officials. So even during winter, when Tara has to remain in the foothills, he has to camp very far from the village. He dare not allow his herd to trespass on village lands or on protected areas. Even for these few winter months, he can barely spend time with his family. Food grain is one of the two main links between the villagers and the pastoralists. The other is wool. The women weave and knit woolens for the whole family. The looms they use are as ancient and traditional as Tara's life, his journey, and the traditional trail he follows. And if circumstances allowed them, they would like to continue grazing, cultivating, weaving, and shearing, as they have always done. Harsh reality is creating circumstances which are making it more and more difficult for the Anvals. Tagar is learning. He has been sent to train under Tara. But whether he will continue to pursue this age-old pattern of life or follow in Tara's footsteps is as much a question of time as of circumstance.
Amen.
Lana, Haji. Aku putar aku. Bukun dulu. Mal kalau dia.
Dia kopsiang.
Dia berapa? Dia berapa? Nah. Betul. Jual apa? Belum jual.
The question of choice is with Duggar. Tara has no choice. The only skill he learnt, the only skill he knows, is shepherding. Grazing sheep, rearing them, shearing them, selling the wool and earning a modest income. He cannot change his life. It is Duggar who is at the crossroads. He was sent to school and he hated it. While his future was being planned, his grandfather sent him to train as an anval. But his grandfather is aware that times are changing. Land does not grow, but the number of people and the size of flocks keep growing. And forests keep disappearing. Food grains give better money. A tea shop probably even more. Maybe a porter's earnings would be large enough for Duggar. Duggar's choice will be guided as much by his grandfather's realistic attitudes as by Duggar's own exposure to an Anval way of life. A life spent in understanding the relationship between men and sheep and mountain paths marked by treacherous mountain streams. A life Duggar has learned to love. It is the other pressures which he is still too young to understand. The very pressures which will ultimately determine his choice. No one can emphasize them for Duggar better than Tara. Sitting in an ancient rock cave, which is Tara's third camping halt, Tara made his point quite clear. The moment I will enter the forests, everybody will be saying something. Where is your grazing fee? Why are you grazing here in our jungle? Don't cut leaves. Get out. Oh, along with our sheep, we face so many problems. Tara's plight cannot be ignored. He has long-established traditional grazing rights, and there is no reason why he should tolerate injustice or high-handedness from any quarter. Environmental exploitation for industrial and commercial use is the real reason for depleted forests, not Anvals. Timber merchants have stripped the land bare, not Anvals. Anvals need only to camp and to let their sheep graze on the forest undergrowth on their downward journey. They have no choice. The sheep must eat to live, not perish and die. But while Tara camps in the forest, he undergoes a few months of intense strain. Cornered by snow in the mountains, the hostility of villagers, and accusations of ruining the environment. For 8 months in the year, the Anvals carefully move up and down Himalayan pastures according to nature's cycle of change. But for the remaining 4 months of the year, they are trapped in a hostile environment which is wholly man-made. Where should they go? Where can they camp? What would the sheep eat for 4 months before they return to the highlands? Over the years, Dagar's grandfather has seen these problems growing steadily. He knows the desperation Tara faces. If grandfather has decided that Dagar should run a tea shop, it is because he feels there are no options left for Dagar. The question is not of forsaking a traditional way of life to raise wood and kerosene fumes in a tea shop. No, Dagar would happily opt for the traditional life if the balance of land was maintained, if the traditional grazing rights of shepherds were truly protected by panchayats and the government, and if circumstances do not force him to act against his instincts.
Yes, Hardy.
Dagar is a helpless victim of changing times. Who knows what will ultimately guide his choice?